Now it is my pleasure to introduce Aris Melissaratos. Aris has been one of my favorite people to interview over the years on public television, probably done that a dozen times. He was the Chief Technology Officer at Westinghouse, among other senior technology jobs, then went into government as Maryland's Secretary of Business and Economic Development for 4 years, and now serves as a senior advisor to the president of Johns Hopkins University, concentrating on technology transfer, among other subjects. Aris has written a book on the future of prosperity and the role of innovation in that, and if that is enough of a build-up, I give you Aris.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm wondering what a big fat old businessman's doing in the middle of this creative class over here. It's really delightful to see such a collection of smart people in this town that are interested in the TEDx and the whole TED concept, because I believe these new concepts speak to our future, and we're counting on you to go make this a better state, a better country, a better planet. I think we're fortunate in this country that we live in what I consider the best country on earth. And I can say that because I came to this country at the age of 13. I was born in Romania of parents of Greek descent who had amassed large fortunes. And as history would have it, communism came in and took everything they had. And because they didn't want to switch over to the Communist Party, we got thrown out of Romania and went back to Greece, to my parents' native Greece. In 1951, left with hardly any possessions, 40 kilos worth of clothes or what have you. Stayed there for a few years and came to this country in 1956, and it's been a phenomenal ride ever since. Unbelievable. You know, when I got into state government at the tail end of my career and got introduced 5 to 10 times a day, and I listened to my bio, it dawned on me that communism is the best thing that ever happened to me. Because literally, had it not been for Stalin and those guys, I would have been a spoiled rich guy in Romania. I would have missed out on all this fun that I've had in this country. And what an incredible ride, folks. I mean, this has been fantastic. I mean, I had a chance to work for 32 years at Westinghouse Electric Corporation, one of the best technology companies of the mid-last century, and had a chance to eventually manage 16,000 people at the defense operations at the airport, what is now Northrop Grumman, where we literally designed and built everything you saw in the Hunt for Red October. All those magnificent satellite sensors that could read newspapers in downtown Moscow, radar systems, sonar systems, all the good stuff that they were doing in that book and some of the other of Clancy novels. Then I got the chance to go run the Westinghouse R&D labs in Pittsburgh, where everything electrical, the book was written on, and where the nuclear power plant of the future had been designed and tested in the lab I ran in the 90s. Then I did a stint as the R&D VP for Thermo Electron Corporation, because I wanted to learn how Wall Street worked and how they spun out all those new products into publicly traded companies, and did a couple years as an angel investor, spending all of my Westinghouse option monies on 32 different companies, 31 or 32, somewhere in there. And I probably made more money in those 2 years than I did the first 35 years of my working career. And I had the most fun when I was in government. I had an opportunity to work with just about every town in Maryland, every business, every chamber of commerce, and had a vision for literally every alley in the state, how we can develop the state. And at the time, the strategy was, how can we get the state ready for the knowledge economy? So given all that experience and the fact that I've probably been involved in managing or delivering about $100 billion worth of government contracts, I thought I would do something in this book that Jeff mentioned, kind of put my vision for the U.S. in the world and the role that technology may play in how we go forward from here. As I said, this is the best country on earth. The best country on earth because people choose it to come here and participate. And that gives us incredible diversity. And that allows us to think more broadly than any other place on the planet. And we have had a phenomenal history of increasing the world's productivity in agriculture initially, and then in manufacturing. And our manufacturing strength helped us win the Second World War. And after that, we got complacent. And frankly, we stopped being competitive We had a continuous decline. If you read the world is flat, and if you read some of the summaries that we've talked about in our book, we accept the fact that we're not as competitive as we once were. We talk about the Jane Fonda syndrome that has scared the nation away from some of the most sophisticated technologies that we could have done. And in some respects, we characterize America as retro-techno, that we don't go all the way because our infrastructure, our legacy systems don't allow us to affordably put in the latest systems. But we make the case that technology should be the foundation of our future. Innovation, technology, the application and creation of new products, that America should retain, for those of us that believe that we haven't lost it, or regain the world's technological preeminence. I believe that ought to be a national priority, that our president, whether he serves one term or two, and the next 10 presidents ought to have as our national priority for America to regain its technical preeminence in the world. Because technology provides a solution to all of the world's problems, whether it's the diseases or the famine that we see in Africa, whether it's the want of peoples in India and China to improve their standard of living. Technology gives us the opportunity to get there. And we need to invest much more than we ever have in basic R&D as a nation. We need to better manage that basic R&D. We need to have presidential appointees, such as my Hopkins colleague, Anis Chopra, that talked to you this morning, that have a vision for the U.S. as a technology powerhouse. To achieve that, I think we need to invest 3 times more in basic R&D as we now do, and better coordinate it and not have duplication department to department. But in order to achieve that, we need to substantially transform our education system. You all have read or heard about the Gathering Storm report that the National Academy put out a few years back, authored primarily by Norm Augustine and our own Nancy Grasmick. We need to take that seriously, and we need to change the education system and go back to standards and go back to the hard sciences. And yes, incorporate the creative stuff with the hard sciences, but we cannot afford, as a leading nation in the global economy, to be ranked 10th, 15th, or 20th in math accomplishments and the like. We need to get away from social promotion and listen to my friend Freeman Hrabowski's push for standards. Our kids need to learn. They need to learn how to be productive citizens in the future workforce, because we're going to need everyone to participate to make this nation great once again. And in order to achieve that, once we transform the education system, we need to make the nation look young again. We're over 200 years old. Our infrastructure is about 200 years old. So we need to rebuild the old infrastructure. And you know, I heard earlier that water will be a commodity over which nations go to war a few years from now. We need to protect our water resources. We need to rebuild every sewer and water system in this country to avoid pollution. We need to change our agricultural ways. So water quality is going to be a key thing as we rebuild infrastructure. And it's not sufficient to just rebuild the old infrastructure. We need to put in place the new infrastructure. Broadband availability for every person in North America. Smart grid. Not only a smart grid where we can tell how much energy and how much the energy we're using costs, but a smart grid that actually takes the generated energy where it needs to go, not where nature wants it to go. There are technologies that achieve that. So rebuilding our infrastructure is key. You cannot have every morning listening to the traffic reports on the radio telling you that another water main has broken, whether it's in Dundalk or Mount Washington or wherever. 200-year-old pipes will do that. So we need to fix that. Air policy, clean air. You know, for 4 years in government, I had to support the business side of trying to balance economics and the environment. And I got to admit, I was somewhat wrong, because I fought too hard for the economics. I'm beginning to become a believer in climate change, that we need to do something, because that drought that we saw earlier can actually move to North America if we let climate change take its course. So we got to do something more dramatic than we're thinking of doing. And I'm literally not a believer in trying to legislate that. I don't believe in cap and trade and those kind of things. I think we need to incentivize and motivate every business leader, every person, to pass that message on. And if our objective as a nation is to be the technological leaders, we need to develop these new technologies for clean air, primarily driven by our transportation systems and our energy systems, or policies, so that we can, in fact, not only provide clean air for our country, but it's imperative that we generate these new technologies so as China builds up, and India builds up, and eventually Africa builds up, that we help them build power generation equipments and transportation systems that are friendly to the planet. So, transportation policy, very, very key. This country is archaic. I believe we ought to have, as a national policy, that our top 30 metropolitan areas in North America should have world-class public transit systems in the next 15 to 20 years. You know, for those of you who live on Boston Street and don't want surface light rail, you know, it's a problem because you have to pay a price to achieve that kind of dream, but you can't get there if you keep going the way we are. So, you know, the public transportation and the change in the culture of how we view public transportation in this country is essential. The interstate highway system has been a phenomenal breakthrough for this country. It's provided mobility. You know, initially when President Eisenhower proposed it, it was a defense initiative. So troops can move faster. Well, now, you know, our people move faster, but our rush hour is congested. 5 years from now, it's going to be congested around the clock. We need to find a way to get cars off the road. We've talked regionally here about a magnetic levitation system from Baltimore to Washington, and if I had said that when I was in government, I think people in Linthicum would have firebombed my house because the light rail left a bad taste of them because my house is a block and a half away from the light rail, and I think maglev would have come that close. I think we need to think big as a nation, as the world's leading technical nation. We need to think that magnetic levitation or some kind of high-speed ground transportation system, I believe it'll be magnetic levitation, needs to be a national imperative. And it maybe needs to be a 50-year national strategy or a 100-year national strategy. And it might cost several $1 trillion. But I envision a system that goes from Halifax to Miami, from Anchorage, Alaska, through Vancouver to Mexico City. And yes, have a plan eventually to take it down to Terra del Fuego, to connect the two continents. Because eventually we'll need the workforce from both continents in order to keep our economy going. And then we need to have 3 crossings almost instantaneously over the North American continent. A northern crossing, a middle crossing, a southern crossing to get people across. As technology evolves, I think maglev could get you from Boston to Miami in a couple of hours. And that'll relieve the air lanes as well, because there's only so much space up there that Southwest and AirTran can put airplanes up in, and we're getting credit up there. So transportation policy is extremely important. Energy policy. You know, we need to analyze how long the hydrocarbon era will last. And you guys aren't going to like it, but I don't think we can just cut off the use of hydrocarbons. We have the technology to use hydrocarbons in a more clean way. We have the technology to drill off the continental shelves. We have the technology to drill in Alaska and not harm the planet. And we need to make sure that we send a signal to our petroleum providers that we're going to be self-sufficient. I would recommend that we break ground instantaneously on the most sophisticated, dream-like oil shale and tar sand processing facilities we could ever dream of, even though we may not put it to work for 20 years. But we need to draw a line in the sand that we're going to be self-sufficient in energy in this country. And we need to invest all that we possibly can in alternative energy technologies, be they wind, be they solar, be they geothermal, or algae energy, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, folks, my 40-some years managing engineers tells me that scaling up those technologies is really going to be difficult. And using all of them combined, as we move into the first decade or so of their extended use, we're going to find that they do other damage to the planet that we need to figure out that maybe that isn't the right way. I'm in favor of something you all probably consider unthinkable, but nuclear is probably our best energy solution. The French model of 80% of the energy being generated with nuclear power plants, I think, is the way to go. We have the technology. You know, the 3 Mile Island was a non-event. Chernobyl was an event, but we have much, much better designs. I may be biased because my laboratory in Pittsburgh, I ran the Westinghouse R&D labs, tested the design of the reactors that the French are proposing to build at Calvert Cliffs. And both Westinghouse and GE developed these reactors. And if I were king for a day, I would issue 20 permits for nuclear plants, let the not in my backyard issues be processed through, and give the nation time to create the capacity again to build those kind of plants. A benefit of nuclear power is that it also produces hydrogen almost as a free byproduct of the reaction. And I believe that in the future, our cars need to be powered by fuel cells, powered by hydrogen, which only emits water vapor. And that is the real solution to the climate change problem. So, I've rambled with some of these issues that I consider important, where technology can bring us to the very leading edge. Technology and the advancement of technology and creating new products to improve the world's standard of living is the business growth opportunity for developed nations. We must do that. We need to recognize that manufacturing in the short term will only be boutique manufacturing in America, because new products need to be manufactured on the world market for the world use. And I submit that technology and manufacturing shift to whichever nation is in the development stage that makes it most affordable, and where the people are hungry enough and willing to be disciplined enough to produce a quality product. We were the nation to which Western Europe outsourced all of its work in the 19th century. We fueled the Industrial Revolution. We became the world's primary market for 200 years. In the 1950s, that began to change, and it looked like Japan will rule forever. Yet, they had problems. They shifted from Japan to South Korea to Taiwan to Singapore. Now it's China's turn and Asia and India's turn. I submit that 10 years from now, as Africa learns how to manage itself, get beyond genocide, that China will be outsourcing to Africa, and that's the way manufacturing will shift around. But if this nation makes a long-term commitment to infrastructure rebuilding, then I submit that patient capital will come in and invest big money in creating a new base manufacturing infrastructure. So we'll have steel mills here again. And if you do maglev and have a plan that is transparent to administration changes, we're going to need to build large factories to build the magnets that it takes to propel that magnetic levitation train. So I think this whole issue of economic development of a nation is cyclical. And our manufacturing went away because we were no longer building infrastructure, because we had finished building most of the roads and the skyscrapers for this city, for this state and country. China is booming right now because they're building magnetic levitation trains from Beijing to Shanghai. They got 1 billion people out in the country, all of whom want to move in the cities. They need cars. That's the development process. So being serious about environmental impact is very, very important. And when I push nuclear, I'm a firm believer that we can manage the waste. We can reprocess, we can manage the waste, and we can manage it such that it doesn't get in the hands of rogue nations, because I'm a firm believer if America lives up to its values, that we can, through interdependence, economic interdependence, have a planet where nations get along with each other. We're only 2 or 3 nations away from having that interdependence built into the system now. You only have a North Korea and an Iran that are real outliers. And yeah, we have the problem of radical Islam. But if we live up to our values, and electing an African-American president in the past year demonstrated to the world that America walks the talk, it does what it preaches, that's very valuable. We may be the only military superpower left in the world, but we're finding out that being a military superpower does not get you the global power that you're looking for. The real power comes from demonstrating your value system, from demonstrating what the Founding Fathers put in place here. A land governed by the people, for the people, by the people, and a land where everyone is welcome. And yet this is, again, as I said earlier, the best country on earth. There's no doubt about it. And you can say that no matter what country you come from. And I come from Greece, the birthplace of democracy. And you can say that even if you come from Greece, because the Greeks may have invented democracy, but haven't really learned how to practice it yet. However, if you come from any country to any other country other than the U.S., and you say that that this is the best country on earth, you're renouncing your birthplace. Only if you come to America can you say that, because this is a product of the world. This is a country where people vote with their feet and want to come to no matter when in time it is. And yeah, some of our people don't come here and get their PhDs and now go back to China or India and start businesses. But there's enough people from all the new countries whose names we haven't even learned yet that want to come here. And it is that diversity, that blend, that will give us the creativity and the hunger and the productivity that will make us the leading nation on earth for now and forever. And we need to lead this planet into a continued existence for a few millennia yet. I believe my time may be up, so I'm going to stop here. Thank you for listening. This may be a dream, but I've had a history of being naively optimistic in accepting my business goals, and invariably the teams that I've put together have been able to make me look pessimistic at the beginning, and I've overshot every goal. I think this nation can meet that kind of a destiny. Thank you, and have a great day.